So, Dean, first thing we wanted to look at was your homepage. It's your main page, should reflect the bigger subject of your service offering and your company as a brand. As we were digging through it, we noticed that the title, so if I was to go in and we'll just use a SERP simulator here. It's the one we're liking right now. There's a handful out there we've used in the past. The other one was having a little bit of an issue with this, and I don't know if it was on their end. We noticed that the terminology was geared towards photography, and we're recommending, because you're ranking well for photographer terms, to shift this around a little bit. So instead of going after photography, we'd go after photographer, specifically the subsections that you're focusing on. When we did look at this, you're focusing on editorial, advertising, and commercial. And when we ran those keywords through, and we also went through this site and looked at, because you have a portfolio here, beautiful pictures. If anybody here, I'm going to post this site. If anybody wants to check out the site while we're talking through this, I'll post this in chat. Unless Kenzie, actually, Kenzie, can you post that in the chat? Yeah, so we were going to suggest reworking the metadata to focus on the term photographer specifically. All the terms we looked up, but we looked up commercial photographer, lifestyle photographer, advertising photographer, editorial, corporate, and industrial. And all of them have very low competition. We're going specifically for photographer. Commercial's got the most volume, 250 monthly searches in Canada. We focused on Canada for this. We didn't look into the States so much, but usually if you're just going to see bigger numbers in the States, there's a little bit of difference in some terminology, but oh, there's something in the chat. So yeah, we were going to focus on photographer specifically, and commercial had the most volume, so that was the one we were going after. And what we're recommending is to capture this kind of traffic. You'll see here it's also truncated. So your names first are going to rank. Usually you'll rank for your name, and there was no issues. When we ran your name through, it came up fine. You'll see it's getting a little truncated here. What we want to do is clean this up, because even though you won't get penalized for having a truncated title, you want as much detail as possible in that title. Any truncation there is it's just not helping the situation. It could be adding keywords to the title, but it's not going to help with any sort of click-through. With that in mind, the title we were playing with, we were considering, you'll see you do have a little bit of real estate to deal with here. Once you add a third topic, it starts truncating. So if I was to rework this, let's just say, I'm using, so this SERP simulator, we use these just to kind of test things. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Excuse me. Run that through. You'll see once we've gotten it down to 2 subject matters, and put the person's branded name secondary, we're able to reduce that truncation. We also bring commercial to the forefront. We use lifestyle here just because it was the second highest search volume. Most of these fall roughly in the same range. So whatever you're really wanting to focus on, we would suggest going with 2. It'll avoid that truncation. Put them closer to the front, because there's going to be a little bit more weight on anything that's at the front. I wouldn't get obsessed about getting an exact phrase being like, we're going after commercial photographer, so should I switch this around to lifestyle and commercial photographer so I have the exact phrase in there? Because Google is smart enough to figure this out. I would use ampersands instead of and, because we're dealing with with a lot of real estate here, so that helps tighten it up quite a bit. And the subject matters, yeah, it's at the front. You still got your name in there, so people know who the photographer is. You're focusing on 2 subject matters, and as well, I would take a look at your meta description. So that'd be the second part down here. So if I was to go, if no one knows what a cyclone search is, this is like this SEO secret weapon. It's a Google operator, really helpful for getting an idea. It's not, so what you search is going to change what shows up here sometimes depending on your search history and what the terms are you're using. But this is a good idea to get an idea of what potentially could be showing up from a search standpoint. So it's pulling your meta description you have defined, which is great. That means they're seeing a correlation between the content on site and the meta description, and it's leading people to click through. You'll see the title is getting clicked. The title is getting truncated. So that's why we're using a tool like this SERP simulator. And just search SERP simulator. The top 3 are all great ones. If one doesn't work for your site because there's some sort of blocking going on, then just pick another one. They all do roughly the same job. So you can also switch them to see how it looks from a mobile standpoint, desktop. I haven't dug so much into what it looks like different from a SERP simulator standpoint into the individual countries. United States is a nice microcosm. Usually everyone will follow suit to what the states are doing. As far as the meta description goes, this is an opportunity to pull people in and highlight more service offerings. We would suggest drop in where you are based from. So you're saying in here you're based in Nova Scotia, Canada. Unless there is, if you have a business reason for that, I completely understand. We're going at this from a bit of an outsider's perspective, but we're trying to handle regain as much real estate as possible in here. So what we're suggesting, and I'll email these off to you as well, Dean. What our example is to focus on. I think we got 1, 2, 3, 4. We were able to fit in 5 of the types without any truncation. So what we were focusing on here, we're still talking photography. We're specializing in commercial, lifestyle, advertising, corporate, and editorial photography for clients in Canada and the US. Actually, now that I see this, put that ampersand in there just so we can save a little bit of real estate, gives you a little bit more room to work. If you want to play around with what you're focusing on, I would definitely go for, you can play with that. And like I said, again, we've got 7 in here that we researched based on what you guys about what your portfolio has and what we were seeing the homepage focus towards. So that's how I would approach that. Then as well with the on page, the photos are awesome. These are great pictures, but there's no text for Google to kind of show some correlation between what the copy is and what the image is. They can read all kinds of the stuff in the back, like the alts and whatnot. So I'd find some way to tuck, and it doesn't have to be top of page. A chunk of text that's kind of an expansion on the description. And we did notice your Google My Business has a great description as well. It goes in about the awards you've won, etc. So let's just run this through. The Google My Business will show up here. I'm assuming this was put in by yourself. So this is a great starting point for putting in some text. It's also an opportunity because your homepage is a real big anchor for your site. It's got lots of authority to be passed around. It generally is the page that's going to have the most authority. There are always exceptions to these rules, but any pages you want to focus on, you can use exact phrase or similar phrase keywords within your copy and link out to these portfolio pages. So this in-copy text has a little bit more weight, those in-copy links, than say a navigation link would have. So by tucking in a chunk of content onto this main page, and it could be even further down or in amongst all the photos, Google can't really, they can read the alts to understand what an image is. They can't really read an image per se to figure out all the details that are being presented. So we would recommend tucking in a chunk of content on there and then linking as well out of that content to different parts of your portfolio and any other pieces that you want to try to draw attention to. And there's a great opportunity again to show some relevancy and some authority passing. And then the SERP simulator we're using is that Mangools, just because I had problems with the one we normally use, but like I said, it doesn't reflect on the site so much. I'm going to post that in the chat right now, if anybody's curious about that. And then if you wanted to see what a site colon search would look like, you can just type in site colon. I'll pass this. You just plug that and replace the domain at the end with anybody's, with what your website domain is. And that will return what pages that Google has indexed. Give you an idea of what they look like in search results. We also recommend when you're doing searches like this is if you want to get an idea, run that site colon search through, but also go into Search Console and find out what page is driving the most traffic, and then do some sample searches of that, because a different query can change what the results look like.
So I had a couple questions. One was my location is important because sometimes I'll do editorial work for publications throughout the US and in Europe and stuff, and they want someone on the East Coast, and that's why when I'm doing the searches, I do put my location in because they need someone, and sometimes they don't understand the exact geographical location, but they know Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, stuff like that. So I'll shoot New Brunswick, PEI, Newfoundland, and Nova Scotia for editorial purposes.
Okay.
And that's is because they're specifically looking for someone who they can find who knows the area. And almost more important now that we can't fly, because I think a bit of a growth area for me is that they will hire someone because the bulk of my competition locally is wedding photographers. And so to find someone in my particular market is slightly more challenging to do. At any rate, so that's why I have the Nova Scotia part in there. And then the other part was you had mentioned something about the searches and discovering that lifestyle. Where had you gone to see?
Oh, that was a third-party tool. I'm going to see if I still have it opened up, actually. If not, I can probably trigger it if you can just give me 1 second. So yeah, this wouldn't be normally available to the average person. So the tool I'm using is called Ahrefs. If you're looking for volume, Moz is a good one, Ahrefs, SEMrush. They're all paid tools. I think they roughly all start about the $100 a month range. But you can get a lot of data from things like the AdWords tool will give you an idea of search volume. I know it's a little bit tougher to get in there if you're not running ads nowadays. Another tool, if you can use Search Console, you can look to see what you're already ranking for, and you can look at impressions to get a rough idea of how many times you're showing up in search results. So having that available in Search Console, the impressions doesn't mean how many times people are searching, it's how many times you have shown up in a search result. But if you're higher up in the search results, that is closer to that, if that makes sense.
Right. And also I will vary with each image that's displayed, because this is a more or less a turnkey website that's geared towards photographers, specifically commercial advertising and editorial photographers. So I have certain fields that I can toggle on and off, and things that are adjustable to me. And one of those things is to adjust the what the title of the page is for each one, which I do change to sort of run the gamut of all the keywords.
Yeah.
And is that something that, and I don't really pay attention to how long that is. I just put in, and sometimes they don't make grammatically the best sentence, but they are there.
Right.
Does that have any kind of weight to concentrate on that? Because I have a list of keywords in a text file. I just paste them in and then put the thes and the ands and the ahs in between them.
Right.
And paste them and just sort of make sure that they're all different and I'm covering all the bases. Sometimes they say Halifax, some say Newfoundland, New Brunswick, whatever the case may be. Because you had talked about putting text along with the images. I have that option. The images themselves have metadata and things embedded in them in Photoshop, and then I put them out. So there is text in that regard, and then there's also text. There's an info thing that you can toggle on and off for each site, for each photo, which will give a description of what the photo is of.
Okay.
I will often put that in, but toggle it off so the viewer can't see it, because I find it takes away from the viewing experience, because it doesn't really matter if the potato was shot for, like a farm tractor was shot for John Deere or McCain's Foods. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I just want them to see the photo and bring their own judgment to it.
I mean, as long as it's available in the alt, then you're accounted for like a user that may not be able to view. So you're dealing with the ADA compliance type of thing. When I'm talking about the text, I'm hoping that you can plug in just a paragraph that would make sense within the initial and not just for the bots, and not just for the individual images, but kind of just introducing yourself as a photographer, if that makes sense. And
so
it doesn't have to be
page.
Somewhere on this page that, like, if you could tuck it in closer to the bottom, that might make sense. If you don't want to, if you want people to see the images first,
Right.
if there's some way to, like, I don't know this this website tool as well, as if there's some way you could tuck it into one of these spaces, that would look really interesting as well. I don't know how it would look on like a mobile device. You can trigger, assuming might be a mobile. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, so they end up being really tucked. Oh, that cleans up quite nice on mobile. Cool. So let's turn that off now.
Because the audience is really art buyers, and art direct, like producers, and then photo editors at magazines, and so they're all used to the navigation system. Is the idea of the same kind of system, because they're just looking to like see if you're capable, see the photos, go through the thing, but they're all sort of like it's their everyday. So that's why the experience is. I have control over certain things, but not other things, because they want to keep the experience kind of consistent for everyone who's in a hurry to find someone to do a project.
Right. Okay. I mean, I still think there's an opportunity with the chunk of text. As far as like, sorry, what were we going to say?
Oh no, I was just agreeing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, okay, fair enough. And then as far as like the title and the description, I mean, we on page, I think this looks great. The only thing I would add is a chunk of text. And I would also, one other thing, and I was going to go over a little bit more about portfolios, because I see some opportunities there as well. But what I was, and sorry guys, I've only had one cup of coffee this morning. I'm kind of running on fumes here. Sorry, brain fart there. Can you repeat, Dean, what you're saying?
You were saying something, opportunity about portfolios?
Yeah, do you mind if I jump into that, and then we'll kind of broadly go over things? Just that's the other bigger opportunity I'm seeing here.
Totally.
And yeah, sorry, and I don't mean to dismiss anything.
No.
I just saw the time, and I want to keep things on track as much as possible. One thing we did notice with the portfolios, you talked about, like, when you brought up, well, for one thing, editorial. Is there some way to gear the editorial page specifically towards the region that you want to be available in? And then we could save on that real estate elsewhere, unless it becomes important for the other spaces as well.
How so do you mean?
Well, you said you're from a regional standpoint, the editorial content is more, that seems to be where people are coming from that want somebody on the ground, somebody in Nova Scotia. I'm curious if you could gear this editorial page specifically for people in Nova Scotia and keep that broader elsewhere.
Yeah, like the editorial clients, I shoot for almost nobody locally.
Oh, okay.
And this is all geared towards people like in Toronto and New York and stuff. It's not, there's no one I shoot for locally. But
they're looking for somebody in Nova Scotia.
But they are looking for someone in Nova Scotia. So to show them water and to show them, you know, the landscape and so forth, it resonates as a coastal craft, that kind of thing. Okay,
that makes sense. One other thing we noticed here, you're ranking second for the term Nova Scotia commercial photographer. I'm going to trigger this. Usually when I do this is when things happen. So yeah, you got this spot right here, which is great. It's linking to your main page. So we were going to suggest, if I'm not mistaken, there's no commercial portfolio section. So I was going to recommend dedicating a page to your commercial content, even though some of this will probably tuck underneath commercial as well. I would suggest creating a portfolio section specifically towards commercial. The other one we noticed was advertising didn't have a dedicated space as well. And that also has quite a bit of search volume around that. So if you could develop a portfolio page specific to advertising, that'd be very helpful. And as well, when we're looking at the titles, So if I was to run, lifestyle was the one I used for an example. So I'm just going to run this through our SERP simulator. So it just says lifestyle. And if we were to do a site colon search to get what Google's kind of considering it, oh, might not have it in there. Interesting. Oh, there we go. That's another thing we noticed. I'm curious if this is kind of by design. When we load up the page, we sometimes get thumbs at the end of the URL, Dean?
Yes.
And this looks to be the same page as this. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's something in the coding, nothing I directly have any kind of knowledge of. It's just how the pages are rendered, I guess.
Okay. I'm wondering if this is something you can bring up with their team to either, do you have control over canonical tags out of curiosity?
What are they called?
Canonical, C-N-O-N-I-C. If not, I would recommend reaching out to the template designer to see if they can either grant it for you or if they're addressing this issue. Because what we're seeing here is this page is canonical to itself. So canonical basically means this page has the same content as this page, but this is the preferred page. So because there's two pages with the possibility of being the content, I would go with the one that's being indexed. So when we looked at this one, I think when we did a site colon for this, we get it in there. This one is the lifestyle page. And then we get into some of these secondary pages. Yeah, so they're getting this secondary content. But the one that's getting indexed right now, it's filling in editorial, advertising, corporate. What I would suggest we do and this is the lifestyle page specifically, is design. So at this point, we're going with the term photography versus photographer because we're looking at the individual pieces. This is the content that people are looking at. They're looking to see photography, not learn about the photographer per se. And so we were going to suggest going with titles like Lifestyle Photography by Dean. And I'm going to butcher your last name if I try to pronounce it, so I apologize that I'm avoiding that. But I'm sure it's not the first time, eh? But that's what I was going to suggest is blank photography by Dean, and then the descriptions all seem to be very similar as well. At least the ones that we ran through, just we're writing unique ones, and it's all going to come back down to whether it's that thumbs page or the main page. That's going to become the dedicated page. When we looked at the content here on portfolio, when I hover over that, I'm seeing portfolio portraits, or let's go lifestyle just to stick with our example. It says portfolio lifestyle. That's what the link is going to. But when I click it, then it goes to thumbs. And I'm really curious what the design thought process behind that is. If these pages still need to exist, they can fix that very easily with canonical tags, and they should be able to do that if this is a template across the whole template. Right. That I'm saying a lot of shoulds because I don't know the people that are developing this template. So that'll help avoid that. So having a duplicate content's not necessarily like a bad thing. It's not like you're going to lose. It's not like you're going to be penalized so much as you've kind of weakened the signal. So you've got two things going for the same thing. So by concentrating the efforts, you're putting all the weight onto one page, and it's making a clear distinction to Google that this is the page dedicated to this style of photography. And then as well, I think there's still an opportunity to, if it's possible to incorporate a small chunk of text explaining what kind of work you do in this specific avenue of photography.
Okay.
And then I'm going a little over here, but one last thing I wanted to bring up is I feel there's a great opportunity here, and it's not so much an SEO standpoint, but we, when working with clients, we don't just measure. We're not just looking for quality. We're not just looking for quantity. We're also looking for quality. So a call to action on these pages beyond just the contact button. If there's a way to tuck something in there, either within the content of all these images, just like reach out to you, that drive people to this main contact form, then you're going to see more people reaching out. They're clearly going to be able to find that contact while they're enjoying your photos.
Okay, that's good.
Does that make sense?
Totally, yeah.
Awesome. Any questions, Dean?
No, that's a lot to go back and go over, because I'm actually in the process of doing a big update. I got a bunch of images to push out, so this is good. I'll be in with the code and stuff and be able to make these adjustments.
Awesome. And we'll process our notes here and send them off to you in the next couple of days, probably by the end of the week, but things have been kind of on weird timelines lately. So if not end of week today.
Anywhere.
Okay, that's fair.